We've been learning about like what we want to learn about in schools and how we can like put that into the learning system, like what we're interested in and everything that we basically want to learn about. And I feel like that's something that I've been wanting to do because like I always think about how what we're learning about like is really gonna affect my life.
It feels like really fun, like and amazing, and you feel really proud of yourself, and it's great to feel proud of yourself.
I wish I had asked them sooner, like, what are you curious about? Because one of the things I found was that kids have really good questions.
It's basically figuring out how you should know yourself.
It's why I got into teaching, because I wanted to make a difference. You know, I wanted to help empower the learners to actually be learners and to be connected and to be impactful members of society.
What was it like for you to experience the dig for the first time?
It was beautiful, right? It was beautiful because trying to help kids understand the connection between why they're in school and how to make it relevant to them. School's about learning. It's about curiosity. It's about nurturing your own curiosity and valuing what you think about and what's important to you. And so what I like about the dig is that we got to watch kids be asked, what is important to you? Not tell them, here's what's important to me and I'm going to teach it to you.
A dig is the Designed Ingenuity learning framework, and the idea of the dig is to unleash the creative mind within all of us. And so the dig is a learning framework. It's foundational to the way that we think. It's a mindset. So it's not a program. It's not something that is sort of the same every single time you experience it.
You can tell when you're learning, when you're surprised. So I'm going to ask you even at the end, what has surprised you about today? So be looking for surprises.
You are guided by someone that is authentically curious through a learning journey that's meaningful and relevant to your own life. And through the personal connections that you make, you are moved towards having an eureka moment, aha moment of something that's really significant that leaves you with that feeling that, wow, I see the world differently now. I'm internally transformed and I'm experiencing life in a way where I feel more courageous to try new things and really step into that creative genius that we all have within us.
Students just really started to learn, like she coined like rabbit hole research, like we're like getting curious and like learning about how things connected. Like that was the whole thing, like making connections between two things that seem completely unrelated. How do they connect on a deeper level? And then how do I represent that somehow through something that I am interested in or that I love? Like if I love music, can I sing a song about it? Or if I want to, if I like food, can I bake a cake? But it wasn't about the artifact or the product. It was about how they used that to show how the things connected, using like new vocabulary they had learned, new information because they had to research. So they were doing reading, writing. They would share it through a process where students get to just talk to one another. So instead of speaking to the whole group, they get to share with each other, and then they do it again. So I got to tell you about my project in 3 minutes. So I'm learning how to speak in a focused, concise way. And then you listen and you give me feedback or you ask questions. And I might say, I forgot to say that. So then when we rotate and I do it again, I get to make those adjustments right there in the moment. And we just found we found that students really made great growth in the speaking and listening piece of what we were trying to do as well.
And from there, realizing as a ELD or English language development teacher for students that English was their second language, it started to check all the standards. And so it was like, wait a second, how can I keep adding more standards to something that was so beneficial? You could just see them, see the learning so clearly that I couldn't stop messing with it, I guess, to see we could add every single standard there was from the state, and it was eventually we added them all, and it was such a beautiful thing to see the kids doing it over and over and iterate this thing that they were loving, mixed with all these standards, mixed with this opportunity, and just to watch them have agency in their learning.
They become very intrinsically motivated to learn and more curious naturally. And we know from neuroscience that when you become curious about one thing, then generally you become curious about really everything. You know, it can really supercharge your curiosity, which can lead to creativity and, you know, definitely an increased ability to learn at a rapid pace, which, you know, creates engagement, which creates academic, you know, academic gains, really.
An architect sounded kind of boring for me, and I felt like I needed more stimulation with creativity. And so I thought of things that I really love, and Disney was one of that. So I looked into like the jobs that they had in different things, and I watched documentaries and stuff about it, and I really just kind of learned a ton, and it was really fun.
We're asking our students to get out of their comfort zone and pick something relatable, right? Something they're interested in, which they don't really have an opportunity to guide their learning. But now teachers are also being asked to get out of their comfort zone and rely more on the students, you know, so it's scary.
Miller has this little picture, and it shows how it's gonna feel. And she was actually really right about it. In the beginning, and when she's talking about it, you're just like, it's gonna be easy. You know, it's gonna be easy. And then you get to those hard parts and you're like, man, this is not easy. And then at the end, you're like, why was I even worrying about that? This is easy.
It's really powerful watching people engage in a dig, because what you're seeing is people come alive with learning. So in spaces, especially schools, where students can seem like they're just sort of going through a process that can feel rote or can feel boring. I mean, it's an old trope that school's boring. Oh well, you know, school's supposed to be boring. But when you see people come alive with learning, it's really exciting.
They have suddenly had something switched on. You know, they didn't realize what was possible at school until they connected to their learning through the dig experience, and all of a sudden everything became more relevant.
It's pretty fun actually, but in the beginning you get frustrated at the Google, because you gotta search up all these things and you just put the words in there, and sometimes your results aren't what you wanted, but sometimes you find, how Mrs. Miller says it, the diamond.
I already know a lot of things about baking, but when I searched it up, I just kept like scrolling down on Google and clicking different websites and researching a little bit more to find different and unique things about it.
Next step is sort of just to connect all the little diamonds and the big diamonds all together to come out with the big picture. For example, my ikigai was rights, and my interests are animals. And so I put it together, and I found all these little diamonds, and throwing it together gave me like this big wow factor, I guess.
I think that people can tell that there's something different about people that have been through a dig. They just know that something's fundamentally transformed in that person, and that they are living on purpose, and that they are clear on who they are and why they're doing what they're doing, and also got a good idea of how to do it. You know, how to really live into all the dreams. Because when you've got a creative mindset, imagination is a real thing. It's not superficial. It's not, oh, I have dreams. It's, no, I'm really going to manifest something that I really want through the power of my imagination.
Well, when I was done with it, everything kind of went together, made sense, and it made me happy because it's what I chose to do. And technically about me.
When we imagine life in which we are truly empowered to create the life that we want, and we believe in our students at this very critical time in their life, challenging them to greatness, and seeing them show up in that greatness, seeing them finding their voice, and seeing them actually able to impact the world today, we completely change how we think about ourselves as adults. Rather than being the holders of knowledge, instead being the co-creators of learning. How do we co-create learning with our young people? When we sit and we learn with them, we become learners again. When we become learners again, we are actually also empowered to be the change makers. At a time that we face complexity, complex problems that are seemingly beyond the scope of any one person. But when we begin to unleash our own creative potential, and we do that collectively with others, we unleash an incredible potential for our humanity.
Those ahas, realizing that happened a lot when I was teaching. But when you see like 20 of them in one class period, it's remarkable, you know? When they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. And then somebody else is sharing. And they're like, oh my gosh, wow. Okay, so that reminds me. And they're just all kind of interconnecting, which I do think really helps build a more connected, cohesive community as well. And I think that's what our young people need more than ever right now. There's very much a disconnected feel to our society. And I feel like this, you know, alongside of supercharging learning, also builds this sense of psychological safety, because they do a lot of deep listening and they realize that they can learn from one another. And it's just it's very inspiring to be part of.
It's definitely nice to have like an open conversation with like the whole class. Like in that way it was different because everyone was talking about like their interests and stuff.
You learn like what they like to do and what how they learn, and like you can like adapt that way, so like you work with new people like better.
The more opportunities we have to be connected with one another and to explore what's important to each other, then the better chance we have of being in community, which gives people the opportunity to recognize when something isn't right, when something doesn't feel good, when someone's off their mark and needs a little bit of extra support.
When we look at the impact of showing up in a new way as co-learners with our young people, where they begin to realize that their learning matters, that they matter, and their learning matters, they begin to want to be in school. The school is a place for them to become. In the last year that Jamie was at Dayton, every single student graduated. She had a 100% graduation rate. Why? Because every student mattered. Every student walked and walked away with a diploma, with a confidence that they matter. Now, does that impact test scores? It'll have an impact on test scores. Will it impact discipline? Of course it has an impact on discipline. There's traditional ways that we measure performance. But more importantly, everybody knew that the students at Dayton had confidence. They had the character of a creative problem solver that allowed each one of them to go on to be successful in whatever way they wanted to. And that's truly the basis of success.
It just felt like really nice to finish it and like make it click and connect. Like, it's so satisfying. And then it makes you dream of bigger things.
At first I thought it was kind of dumb and that it wouldn't work, but I learned that it works pretty well, and I got to learn like so many different things.
Seeing that middle schooler do so well, so quickly, in a way I couldn't do, because of how I was educated, because of my background, and I've got a pretty vast background. it didn't equip me to tap those pieces of my brain.
When we bring the superintendents, we bring the administrators down, and they all of a sudden listen to students who are authentically learning, the response is almost always, I had no idea. I had no idea of their brilliance. I had no idea.
Has anyone ever asked you to be curious before?
Not many times.
And how does that make you feel?
It makes me think more about myself so I can figure out that question.
Do you feel like you learn more or less when you're curious?
I think I learn more.
I think we give a lot of lip service to curiosity, but I think we have to ask ourselves the really hard question of what does it mean? What does it look like to actually nurture a young person's curiosity?
It said like something, it was along the lines of, I'm not worried about like, we were talking about Tyrone and rap, and then it's like, I'm not worried about that kind of thing. I'm just trying to figure out what to do if I live.
And I think that requires something different than what we often do in schools. So I think the beauty of the dig is it's a real active process that we can learn, that we can utilize to build tools to capture curiosity and engaged learning. And what you see when you do the dig is that it's not just the kids are more engaged or more curious, but they actually transform who they are. They transform their possibilities. They transform their confidence levels. They transform the depth of their interests or the depth of their future pursuits. So this is life transforming. It's not just education transforming.
The biggest question that someone can ask about this whole experience is like, what is it like? And like, what is the point of it? And I actually had this experience at lunch. Like, we had our mini dig in the morning, we did 2 periods, and then all the 7th grade teachers were like, who are all those people in your classroom? And I tried to explain it to them, and it was really difficult because I found myself being like, well, you just have to experience it. It's an experience, and once you like open up that door, it's very much like an enlightenment of, wow, this is totally different than like how you're supposed to do school. And I found myself kind of like sputtering for words over how do I explain what like an authentic learning is to teachers that are used to, here's, page 3, let's do all the problems on it. It's either right or it's wrong, or here's your homework for tonight, read this, do this.
Some of the stuff that we're learning doesn't always feel like the most helpful. And so I feel like if I got to choose, it might feel more helpful and like get to feel and like have an impact.
So you really can't imagine like choosing your education?
No.
Would you want to?
Yeah.
We're holding our kids back. They are capable of achieving levels of brilliance well beyond our imagination. It's us that are holding them back. We consistently see them achieving well above their grade level. Why? Because they wanted to. They were curious. They knew that learning mattered. And so when the adults begin to realize that we're actually constraining and restraining them from their brilliance, if we just challenge them to that, then they can begin to say, yeah, the standardized test, yeah, whatever. We need the brilliance. Yeah, let's go get the brilliance.
When we sat with that group of students at the beginning and talked about, what this could be and what we want to do, and we said, what if we could like change education here in Dayton? And then someone said, what if we could like impact like our county, like other schools that are around us? And then someone said, what if we could impact our state? And then this one, I think she was a freshman, said, what if we could impact the world? And we were like, yeah, because it's like, dream big, whatever. And I don't know what that meant or we didn't know what that would look like. You form it in like, what would that look like? And near the end, we had people coming and visiting us a lot, like just wanting to see what we were doing. And we didn't quite get it because we were like, we're not a shiny rock. We're in the messy phase, but it was like they just wanted to come see. And then this group from Australia came. They were doing this tour and they'd heard about something, so they wanted to come, teachers, administrators, and they spent the day with us, or like a half day with us. And in the end, we were doing a retrospective of how the day went and what they gained from it. And the light bulb went off in that moment. And I looked at that student and I'm like, we impacted the world.
When we think about where it started, and then we realized that, oh, okay, some Australians came over and they were, really inspired by an in and out, so a circle sort of practice to hear the stories of the students and what they were up to with their learning. Then asked Thompson to start guiding educators in Australia and what they've been able to do in their primary schools. And then I learn about it and I'm like, oh, let's do this with some Kenyan young people. So then we're doing it in Kenya. And then it's like, oh, my educators that I'm working with in China, they really want to learn what this is about as well. So let's take it there. And consistently discovering that, oh, this framework, yes, it's designed to unleash creative genius of all of us. So yes, we're having an impact on middle schoolers here in Westerville, and yes, we've had an impact on primary school children in Australia, but also we've had an impact on 23-year-olds that have come out of their university experience in Kenya. Like one of them that became a project manager for supporting a community of the Masai Mara tribe in Kenya to get access to water, which we're really, really close to at this point. And that connects us back to the story in Westerville, because there's a nationwide competition called Future City. And in that, the young people are allowed to design a city that can be completely fictional, completely imaginary. So what will this particular city look like in 100 years? However, when the science teacher and Linda sort of presented an idea to them that well, how about you design a future city for the people in Kenya, they have taken on that challenge and actually taken it to another level because of the way that they applied the framework of the DIG. So as a team, they were able to take this DIG framework and just learn exponentially fast. They were able to create solutions to some of the problems that none of us would have thought of. The research that they did has led us to understand how solar energy might work or might not work in that area, to understand that there are more ways to get access to water than just drilling a borehole, to help us understand that actually fundamentally this community must remain connected to each other, and therefore we cannot put direct pipelines into people's homes, because if we do that and they're living 10 kilometers apart, they'll never have any reason to gather together. So they really are guiding the development of this city, of this community. And it's just profound. It's just, in some ways, people might not believe it's true, but it really is, because they just got so into owning their own learning journey. And there's a quote from someone called Terry Doyle that's, the one who does the work does the learning. Well, they did the work, so they learned a lot. And they're so passionate about it still, that even though they've left middle school now, they're still wanting to meet with us. They're still wanting to meet with the members of the community and the project manager that has been guiding the work there, so that they can support through fundraising, through making more connections with other potential partners, through really sort of seeing can we achieve our goal of empowered dignity for these people. And so they're part of a story that's bigger than we can possibly imagine, just by, by unlocking their curiosity. It's an incredible thing.
I mean, it was just a profound shift in depth of understanding, depth of knowing, depth of knowledge that I didn't actually think was possible before that.
Every single person has brilliance. I believe this, 100%. and I always say it takes on two forms. Brilliance as in like they have this light inside of them, this energy that if fanned and if fed will really shine, and you can see it in their eyes and you can see it in their face. I also think everybody has something that it's a gift that they have, or a talent or a strength that they can use to do something, to make an impact in the world. And I think our education system is set up to only recognize a certain type of brilliance. And that is where we saw it in kids that we didn't see it in. That was when it was like,
you
okay, you couldn't unsee it.
I was making something that other people would look at and be like, hey, I could do this. I could help the world.
This work matters more than anything because education births all other professions.
Clearly, the world has changed a lot, and education has changed very little. And if we want to prepare kids for this really dynamic, fast-moving world of innovation that we're living through the time probably of the greatest change in the history of human civilization, we have to be preparing kids to be agile, to be mobile, to be thinking creatively, to be changing the way they're thinking, to be digging deeply into their curiosities. So I almost think it's a disservice to kids to continue to educate them the way we did for the past world when we're preparing them for a future world that's very different. It requires something very different of them.
When the world changes around you and you do not change, you become irrelevant. That's what's happening with our schools. The kids know this. Why are they becoming less engaged? Because they realize it's not relevant. Why are they learning all this information when they can just Google it? Why? Now with AI, why? If we don't challenge them to a higher level of thinking, they will be replaced and replaceable by technology. This is the reality we're living in. Not only that all that knowledge is accessible, but knowledge is also gotten to a point where it can be created by computers.
We're not just coming up with some crazy idea. It's like, this is what our world needs, and this is what these are the kind of people, problem solvers, creative, thinkers. So we need to do it different. We need to understand that the education system was not built for the world that we're in today.
There's a lot to say, well, we don't want to change. Oh, that's fine. You don't want to change. I don't want to change. We don't like change. We don't have a choice. The education that we're giving to our kids is increasingly irrelevant, and the kids will tell us this. If you ask them, they will say this is irrelevant. Hello, are we listening to them? If you ask business people, is what we're teaching the kids relevant? They'll say no. You're not preparing them to be the people we need. So what's only holding us back is our fear of change. But we don't have a choice. We have to walk into that unknown together with courage. Because if we don't, there is no future.
There are children out there that are crying out for us to do this work, for something to change in the school system. The data speaks for itself. Never has there been such a high rate of suicide in our schools. Never has there been such a high expression of mental health issues. I don't know when was the last time the teacher retention was such an issue. We have to do something. We have to. And so us doing this work together means that we know that, yes, we're taking on a system that's a fundamental part of our society, and we're not doing it alone, and we're always learning. And as long as we keep trying, as long as we keep doing, as long as we keep experimenting, as long as there's going to be hope in the world.